So I will reintroduce the wonderful Erik Ward from Oxnard Union High School District. Thanks for joining us, Erik.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is great.
Excellent. So Erik has been using Read&Write for a long time in his district as well as personally. And so I think he's a great person to share some of his ideas about really how to get the most out of the implementation of Read&Write. So I will go ahead and move on here so you can share a little bit, Erik, about Read&Write in Oxnard High School District.
All right. Let's see here. I'm not. All right. So my name is Erik Ward. I'm one of the few people that I know who's been on every side of the IEP. I've been a student, and I've been a parent, and I've been a case carrier, and I've been an administrative designee through the IEP process. We've been using Read&Write for a while at the Oxnard Union High School District, mostly in our special ed and EL D population as a support. But where I first came across Read&Write was way back in the late 90s at Cal Poly Pomona when I was a student there. It was way back in Read&Write 3, if you can believe that. Yeah, so we've been using it for quite a while. Our students really enjoy it, both for using digital textbooks and going on to websites and doing research, as well as quick ways to get a lot of information down at one time. So that as we go through our my little presentation here.
Thanks, Erik. I'll move on to the next slide here. So you've got some terms here.
Yeah.
I really like how you're connecting your personal interests to Read&Write.
So yeah, so I always start with normalizing the terms when I talk with large groups of people, mostly because we come across all these terms that everybody loves to put out, and everybody has the term bingo when they go to conferences. So I'm going to start with the concept of gamification. Now, when I use the term gamification, what I'm talking about is taking elements from games, whether that be board games or card games or video games, or just in terms of game playing, and bringing it into areas that are not necessarily games. In this case, of course, education. But as we pull and we talk about these concepts, they oftentimes will use great labels, and I always like using the labels because it's very specific to what we're shooting for and trying to find how a student is actually reacting to what we're offering them. So when I say gamification, what I'm talking about is the application of game elements into other activities. All right, so we'll also be talking a little bit about UDL, or Universal Design for Learning. Again, I'm not talking about it from a specific standpoint. So if you do UDL at in your district, and you have a very specific, this is what UDL means, by all means, sure, that's awesome. I use it mostly more as a educational framework for looking at how we can differentiate tasks from actual learning. And if we design everything for learning, the tasks become more fluid as to what task you have to do in order to gain access to the content. So when I talk UDL, when I reference that, just know that what I'm thinking is that we're talking about as many students having as many ways to access the content as they possibly can, and even the ways to be able to show what they actually have learned. The last term that we'll be talking about is growth mindset, and I'm always very careful with this one because I love the concept, but I have been in classrooms where it's been misunderstood, where students have been given essentially an impossible task, with the idea being that they're practicing failing, which is not really my understanding of growth mindset. So the belief that anybody can move from where they are to moving more forward, that's when I'm talking about growth mindset. So we'll be talking about balancing that difficulty of this is something that you can't do now with the ability to stick to it. And I loved using gamification and growth mindset together, because there isn't anybody who plays video games who goes, oh man, I'm expecting not to die at all during this game. Everybody knows, well, gee, if I played through this the first time or the second time or the third time or the 3,000th time, I'll probably end up making a mistake or two. And so I'll need to just be able to bounce back and get back from that and move forward. So growth mindset, when we're talking about it, is just a development and a way to take difficulty and grit and put some words to it. So my history with Read and Write. As a special ed student, way back in the late 90s, I came across it. It was fascinating to me to study this program that came from Ireland, and the person that I talked to brought up that this was really designed for ESL students, students where English is a 7th language. And they brought up how in Europe you have the Germanic languages that have a very specific rule set and definition, and then you had the Romantic languages, the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, and they had their own set of rules. And then we had English, which used both at kind of random times. And so the tools that were put into place were put there designed not for people who were who couldn't learn, but actually people who were fairly brilliant but had to learn this language that was different across both of our root languages, as it were. Then when I became a special educator and was working with students there, I came across Read and Write again. We got it way back in with Read and Write 9, and we've been sticking with Read and Write ever since. We've greatly enjoyed it, mostly for the flexibility. Our school has gone, or our schools have gone, Microsoft and Google. And Read and Write was able to go with us the whole way through, showing how to use the tools in either Office or in Google has been so helpful. And then actually I use Read and Write with my own children who are autistic, and my daughter is dysgraphic, and so. Being able to use some of the tools to be able to make their work more interesting has made it so that my children have produced a lot more than they would have had I handed them a sheet of paper and pencil and told them to move forward, or heaven forbid I gave them worksheets, because they were going to ignore no matter what.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the types of tools. I like to put the tools into different categories because a lot of students will have a tendency to, when they're offered an assignment, to start just trying to do. And so I came across this first actually at the university. I had students who I worked with there, and we kept having the same problem. The students would come in and they'd be like, well, I've been told I've got to do an 8-page essay, and I've gotten to page 3, and that's all I had. That's it. And we said, okay, well, wait, how did you figure out what you're going to write about? Oh, I didn't. I just started, putting words to paper and kept going until I ran out of things to say, and then would go back and read it. And so we'd go back and we'd go, okay, wait, why don't we, before we ever start putting words down to paper, why don't we figure out how much you actually know about this? And so then you can figure out what angle you want to attack it so that you can always hit the distance that you're going. And so we talked about that as being work planning. So I'm not going to start working until I have a plan of how it is that I'm going to actually work. Now, my high school students love taking advantage of this. I'm sure none of your guys would ever do this, but my students would spend extra time going, oh, we still need to figure this out. Oh, we still need to plan for it. And it's like, well, yeah, there's a certain point to where you can do it, and then we're going to move forward. So work planning is a great aspect in order for the tools like using the highlighting tools, collecting highlights, and even one that I use for work planning is having the students read through the reading first with doing just highlighting, with the idea being that they're going to use vocabulary, so that way they can turn into me what words they think were going to be difficult. So that was that first part. And so then when I go, hey, we're going to read this for real, they can't look at me and go, oh, I don't know any of these words, because we will have said, oh, we've already done that. And in fact, you've turned it in. And in fact, I've given you points for it. So let's keep moving. The next part would be the work stages. And so not that any of your students would ever do this, but again, some of my students would start writing and then they'd stop and go back and start editing. And then when they started to try and write again, they would have completely forgotten what it is that they were trying to write. So when I talk to the students, and I go, okay, so you've got your plan, put down stuff first. I know it's going to highlight it and say that it's misspelled, and I know it's going to give you the green underlines to tell you that that you need to edit things. Don't worry about that first. What I want you to do first is just put out all the information that you got. And the speech recognition is a wonderful tool to get them to do that. So it's not, don't look at the screen, don't think about don't think about how you're going to solve this or where you're going to put the punctuation. Just put down some words, get the content in, and you know what? We'll edit afterward. We'll make it look pretty afterward. But this way you have your planning, your production, and then making it better. And so that's where you can get, as you're talking, the gamification. When we talk about, okay, so how are you going to attack this? You start attacking and you go, okay, how could you make it better? It's exactly the same way. And both UDL, growth mindset, and gamification will tell you that you want to have the checks early and often, and be able to make changes as you're going through, not waiting until the very, very end. And then obviously the doing the work, and that's the most obvious with UDL, is which work are we having you do? How is it that we can separate what I'm asking you to learn from what I'm having you write or what I'm having you do? I'm a horrible homework person. And I was that guy in high school who my teachers would tell me, you're going to need to write more, because I would hand them just enough for the answer. It could be yes, then I'm writing yes. And they're going, but you just talked to me for 6 months, for 6 minutes before this, and you're still talking to me about the content. Why didn't you write any of that down? And the answer was, yeah, I'm not doing that. So you figure, be happy with what you got. So we need to make sure that the generation of work is actually shows what the students can actually do. And so again, text to speech is a wonderful aspect. You might have, if you have students who have a rough time speaking to you, there's the read aloud tool, and it is so helpful to get students out of their shell and to move them from where they are to where they could prove that they could be.
Excellent.
So the next I wanted to talk about is a gamification concept called iteration time. We talk about iteration time. Anytime that you're building anything, it's how long it's going to take you from the start of something until it's finished. But in video games, it's used as the concept between how long between when you fail something and when you get to start it again. So in many games, what you'll do is you'll go and then you'll die, and then a word will pop up on the screen that says continue, and it just starts you up right where you were previously. In education, we have a rough time. We oftentimes will offer, we'll set up an assignment, and it may take us a couple of days to grade. And so we'll say to the student, oh, hey, so you've taken this exam on Thursday. I'm going to take the weekend to grade it. So I'm going to tell you on Tuesday that you failed the assessment, or you failed the test, or you didn't pass the assignment, and you're going to have the opportunity to do it again, next Tuesday or next Thursday or next Friday. In the student's mind, they're going, I did my best to get ready for this, and now you've given me a whole week to forget all the other things, and now you want me to try it again? Because of that distance, they're going to have a tendency not to want to repeat it. Or if, for those of you guys who have offered essays, where you start having the kids, they work on the essay for about a week, and then you get them back and you go, yeah, this isn't good. How many of them will go back and do it again? If it takes them a week, they're not going to handle it. However, if you can make that iteration time, the time from when you check it to the time that you offer them feedback for them to try it again, and make it as short as possible, they're much more likely to be able to do it for you. So if you're using the highlighting tools and having them collect their notes, and then having them send that to you, if they've spent even a half hour collecting notes, and you get back to them and you go, yeah, you didn't do enough here, and if you're going to write a good essay, you need to have good research. Do the research again. They're much more likely to give you another half hour than they are to give you another week of essay. So the shorter we can make that time, from the time that they failed to the time that they started again, the better off they're going to be. I don't know how many teachers have practiced the whole, okay, so if you so turn in the test to me, I'll grade it right here, and I'll hand it back to you for you to, with a blank sheet, for you to be able to take the test again. But many more students will take the test the second time within the same period than they will come back a day or two later for lunch or after school or before school. So iteration time is a wonderful question to have in the back of your mind as a teacher. How quickly is it that I'm getting this feedback turned around, and how long will it take them to repeat the process?
Great way of looking at it.
So the last one for you is a little bit of a tweak that I got. Again, I got this from the college students, and I loved it, and I keep I offer it to the high school students as often as I can. Text-to-speech when they're doing their reading. A lot of my students at the college level found that if they sat and listened to the content, it was not quite as frustrating, but still fairly frustrating as it was to try and read it, because it would take them a long time to try to put all the words together and spend their time decoding what they're listening to. And so what we came up with was a way for them to reread and reread in a way that was less stress provoking. So a lot of my students would set the text to speech actually a little quicker than they normally would, and listen to the whole reading first one time. The idea being that they're just getting the overall concept, the summary of what it is that they're learning. So they didn't recognize every single word. That's okay. They didn't get all of the concepts. That's okay. But they knew kind of where the reading was going. And then they could go back and they would slow down the text to speech. And so then it would slowly and methodically go through all the content, and they could write their notes at a speed that they could handle. Well, that means that now these students had listened to the content not once, but now twice. In the same length of time, it took many of them to read it once. Actually, some of them, it took them half the time to read, to listen to it twice than it would take for them to read it once. But then there was one more step that I really, really liked, and this is one that most people don't think of right off the bat, and that is, how do you tell what you don't know? Because we ask the students, hey, before the test, I want you to study. But how do you know what you don't know? If you remember something, you probably will remember it enough to be able to answer questions about it. But if you remember nothing about it, how do you remember that you need to go and study for it? So my college students, how they figured this out was what they would do is they turn the text to speech up even quicker than they did that very first time, just before they started studying. And they would listen to the whole reading very, very quick. And you could hear them go, yep, 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 as they're listening to the content, listening to the content kind of speed by. And every time they go, oh wait, what was that? They'd actually pause the reading and write that concept down, and then start it again and keep going. Yep, 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 yep. Oh, I don't know what that is. Pause it. Write that concept down. Well, at the end of it, they will have gone through all the reading now a third time, and they have a list of the concepts that they don't know right off the bat. And so that becomes their study sheet that they then spend their time and actually work on the stuff that they didn't remember, not the stuff that they kind of remembered, or the stuff that they did remember and go, oh, I know how to do this. The test should be easy. Anyway, so these are just some techniques that I've come across, and some thoughts that I've had as I've worked with Read and Write throughout these years, and with the different levels of students, mostly college and high school, but they do seem to be very, very assistive for everybody who's given it a shot. Any questions or comments that I can answer?
Erik, these are great strategies, and I think a lot of times people who ask questions are kind of asking them thinking, oh, I'm going to use this with students who are at a very, very basic low level. So it's great that you're coming at this from not just the high school level, but even the college level. It's wonderful.
And actually, from our local junior colleges actually saw it from us, and they were able to write a grant. And so the students who use Read and Write with us, when they go on to the junior college, they actually have access to it there as well.
Which is great. Yeah, I love to see that when the students have continuity of access. I think Greg is checking to see if we have any questions. This is a great chance for you folks to ask questions of somebody who's a real veteran with Read and Write. So if you want to ask questions over there in the chat window, we will make sure you get a chance to get these answered by Erik. So we'll just give it a moment to see if we've got any questions. All right, give you guys another moment or two to formulate some questions. This is a great chance to talk to somebody who really, really knows. So far, I'm shocked. So far, no questions. Let's give it just a quick moment here. Here we go. I knew there'd be good questions. So we have a question. Can Erik speak more about the gamification aspect of Google Read and Write? Not sure if there is something we should be setting up for students or if he's referencing what's embedded. Want to speak to that a little bit, Erik?
Yeah, so gamification, I've been to a bunch of conferences, and usually when the term's used, it's used from something that is that you pay for. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is using the embedded tools as they are in conjunction with an experience. So one of the parts to gamification is, or to video games themselves, is not having the lid on the number of points you can score. So if you were to suggest to students, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you do the vocabulary, and you're going to get let's say 3 points per term that you pick up. You need to have at least 5 terms, but you can use as many terms as you're willing to find. They can actually score extra points, and it leads them to then start looking at the vocabulary not as, oh, what's the minimum I can do, but wait, you mean you're going to give me credit if I read all the way through this and find the vocabulary that really doesn't mean anything to me, and I really want to know. So obviously, I'm not going to give you points for of and the and and. Mm-hmm. But if you find at the end of the reading that it talks about the commandant, or we're talking about reunification, and you go, oh man, I don't know what that is, but most of the kids haven't read down this far. I'm going to use that as one of my words. You're going to end up scoring more. You've given the students a rationale for them to look all the way through and to continue to get points all the way through the reading, as opposed to finding the top 5 or 6 vocab words that they might have an issue with and just turn it in. So again, it's more about the concept of how do I get students to continue to move forward, and how do I get them to game my assignment so that they stay engaged from beginning to end, not just look for the C answer, not just look for the B answer, but actually move all the way through.
Oh, that's great. We're getting some great feedback. This is a wonderful incentive to dig deep into reading, and definitely agree. And I would say, you know, your comments about iteration time are similarly taken. I think one of the things that happens a lot in especially our primary classrooms, is that we may have reading groups where we, you know, circulate throughout the classroom, and maybe once a week or twice a week we meet with students to work on reading. And, you know, we may be talking to them about fluency, and we may say to them, oh my gosh, you know, we've looked at your reading and we've realized you tend to leave the you know, the S's off of plural words, and the kids are like, I don't know, that was last Tuesday.
Exactly.
You know, so I really like how you're approaching this, how you're kind of combining those different things. We have another question. One of our participants is saying, I think these are great ideas. How do you begin teaching them to younger kiddos who are not as interested in studying or have not yet developed good study skills?
Oh, very good. And that's part of the issue with our special ed students, is they've spent a lot of time failing, and so they discover, oh well, wait, if I do nothing, I get an F, but you know, if I try and it's not pass worthy, I get an F. So what's the difference in outcome between trying and not passing and not doing it at all? And so for the students who are those students who have not quite developed those study skills, one of the big outcomes that we find that begins to get them to buy in is the idea that anything is better than nothing. And then once you've gotten a student to do once you get a student to do anything, you can get a student to do anything. And what I mean by that is just getting them that first step, and where they're seeing the difference in outcome between attempting and failing and not doing anything. that's when you start moving them forward. So the kids who have not gotten good at studying, and the younger students, they're not used to that aspect, but many of them actually were more than happy to spend hours and hours on video games that they fail at all the time. My younger son is one who loves video games, but he loves the death animations. So the very first thing he does on any video game that he plays is jump directly into the thing that he thinks will murder him the quickest, because he loves watching that outcome. So for him, that's not a negative. That's just the way it is. If we're looking at the student as an individual who's experiencing our class like any audience member from in entertainment or any video game player, you got to figure out where they're coming from. And so the students who are used to things coming easy to them have a tendency to lack that grit to be able to go, oh, hey, I failed at this, I can try it again. They'll be more frustrated beforehand. So if what we can do is we can close that iteration time and also reinforce the effort, they're going to start moving forward and going to be more interested in these next steps of good study habits. But if they don't have to do it, in terms of they don't have to do it either to understand the concept, or they don't have to do it to get to fail, now we're in a situation where they're not going to try to learn those because there's no reason to. So we need to have that good balance between that difficulty and that grit. I want you to move forward. I'm not putting you in an impossible situation, but one you're going to have to actually game the assignment for to be able to move forward.
That's great. Looks like you're inspiring some great ideas. We've got a commenter talking about how her students sometimes use the spell check tool to just fly through their essay rather than slow down and engage with the connections. And she let us know she thinks she's got some great ideas there.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm a big fan for writing. We used to tell the college students, do not have your girlfriend read your writing, or do not have your tutor read your writing. Certainly don't let the professor see your writing until you've listened to it yourself. So listen to it first, using that read and write, and that's a really good first step to the editing process.
And for those of you that are familiar with the tools, this will make sense. We can do a quick demo and show you as well. But one of the strategies that's been really helpful for some people is to actually use the audio maker for students to actually create an audio file of their written output, and maybe not even look at the computer while they listen to it. They could load that MP3 onto their phone and listen to it while they're jogging. And very often what we hear is, oh my gosh, that's not what I said. Well, that's what's on the page. That may not be what you meant to say. But that is like what's on the page, and that sometimes really helps with students. We have a number of new users who haven't really explored the tools very much, who are looking for a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and have Greg launch this poll here, just to find out how familiar people are with Read and Write, and we can plan the rest of our time together based on that. And it looks like some of you know us well. A few of you not so much. We'll give it just another moment. Okay. And it looks like we've got kind of a mix there. So I will go ahead and do a demo. And if you have anything that you want to kind of interject, Erik, from your own experience, please feel free to show. I think you've talked about universal design. I want people to know that we will be sharing these slides with you after the presentation. There are some great links. So if you're new to universal design and you want to know more about universal design, you will definitely be able to find that out. But that was definitely something that I think Erik was talking about, and there's different aspects of universal design, and we certainly can help students in all of them. But I think one of the areas where we really do help the students is with those multiple ways of expressing what they know. And Erik, I know, is very good at that, but we really want to give those students those moments to really shine and show you what they actually can do. So we're focusing today on Read and Write. We're also focusing on Read and Write for Google Chrome extension. That's what Erik is using. We may touch real briefly on another tool that Erik's district is using starting this year called Equatio that allows us to do those things with math content. But I'm going to focus on the Read and Write for Google Chrome extension. And yes, Erik, your district is somewhat unique in that you have actually used both the Windows and the Chrome extension. You've been with us for a long time. So you've been able to kind of make that transition, right?
Oh yeah, well, and we even did the Mac for a while too. So we were
oh yeah, that's right.
We've hit all the sides, so you bet.
Yeah, so you guys have kind of seen it all. There's some different ways that you can think about using these tools. You can think about using them not so much to take the Smarter Balanced assessment, although you can do that with Read and Write Windows. As it currently stands, the assessment consortia are not allowing the use of third-party extensions inside the testing environment, but it is not an accident that our tools look and feel and perform very similar to the tools that students are going to have in the assessment. So text-to-speech, where the students can, hear the computer speak out loud to them. Some of the students might have an accommodation for voice input, where they speak and the computer takes down what they say. We do that. And I really like the way Erik is talking about using the highlighters. Your students starting in, I believe, 4th grade on the CAST are going to need to be citing evidence in the text. So the more that they're able to do in their regular coursework, the more ready they're going to be able to actually demonstrate that knowledge in the testing environment. The other way that you can think,
if I may interject real quick on that last slide, the text-to-speech in the for designated supports. Remember that those designated supports can go to anybody who is actually using these tools. And so if you have a student who is using the listening in mathematics and science, that's been just a real great area for us, because really in the test itself, it's not concerned about how well you read math and science. They want to know the content. And so the text-to-speech, bringing down that requirement to be able to read those large words. We had a student who was taking a practice test, and she came across the word coordinate, and her math teacher had been using the coordinate. The math teacher had been using the word orally many times, but she couldn't remember what it looked like written down. But when the computer read it to her, she goes, "Oh, that's what he was talking about. Oh yeah, I know that word." So it was an area where the students can still move forward. It's a great tool and a thing to be thinking about for your Smarter Balanced.
Great point. We know that with STEM content, students are tasked with not only understanding the concept and being able to decode the word that denotes the concept, but they may also have the extra added piece of having to annotate it a different way for math or science. So yeah, giving that reading support is huge for them. There were a number of folks who were asking for a quick demonstration. So I am just going to demonstrate quickly the Read and Write for Google Chrome. So when I am inside a document in my Google Drive, I actually will have access to the Read and Write for Google Chrome toolbar. That's this toolbar that you see right here. I can kind of swing it up and out of the way. And you guys should hear this okay on the webinar. I can click anywhere. This is a Google Doc. I can just click anywhere in here, press the play button, and it's going to read that out loud for me. We can get that louder for you guys.
A polygon is two-dimensional.
And there's actually quite a lot of research behind why it's lighting up the sentence in one color and the word that you're hearing in another. Very, very helpful for students with disabilities, also for our ELs. The general kind of data shows that students who hear and see those words at the same time generally read 2 levels higher, read and comprehend 2 levels higher than they normally would. But for our students with disabilities, the average is actually 7 levels. So it's really, really a lot. And for our students in high school, that's a big gap to cover, as Erik was saying.
Oh, yeah.
We have some onboard tools. We have a dictionary, so I can select a word and look it up in the dictionary, and the picture dictionary as well. And you'll see in that picture dictionary, those are super supportive, especially, again, for those STEM concepts. So if I didn't know what perimeter was, the dictionary wasn't going to help me a whole lot. And then I wanted you guys to see a science concept. If I look up carbon, I'm actually going to get the element, not just a little lumpy thing. So pretty simple. And Erik, I don't know if this is true in your district, but most of my districts, the most popular tool on our toolbar is this vocabulary icon right here.
Oh, absolutely. It's the, when I talk with, shockingly, English teachers have been ones who have been unhappy with, like, me offering tools that would read for the students. However, the moment that I say, hey, check this out, you can have them read something and it'll pull out vocabulary for them, boy, that completely moves them 180 degrees. They go, wait, how quickly can I get this on the computers that we're working on?
Yeah, it is usually like the thing that people use a lot. So you can see I've taken some key terms here. I can look them up in the dictionary, the picture dictionary, but if I take those terms, color them in with one of these sort of colored highlighter crayons, and click this vocabulary button, the one that looks like a bullet list, it's going to harness the power of the dictionary and the picture dictionary to make me, oh, it doesn't believe on me. I've just got to remind it I'm me again. There we go. And I am going to just press that button, and it's going to go out and it's going to make me a new Google Doc at the top of my Google Drive. And it's going to build a table with the word that I selected, the meaning from the dictionary, the picture from the picture dictionary, and then a blank column here for me to fill in however I would like. Pardon me there. I'm having some sign-in trouble with Google today, but there we go. Just wants to be me. So you can see how easy and quick it is to go ahead and get this thing started. You can see it was very simple. It just pulled right from anything that I had. And if you know how to use these tools, they work the same in different file formats. I could be doing this with the PDF file. I could be doing this with a website. So I could go out and look at today's news article, choose 4 words I haven't seen before, pull them out into this vocabulary list. And if I wanted to put the word in a sentence, I could use our talk and type. I need a new fence around the length of my yard. And it'll just go right in there. I could also use our word prediction. So you'll see I have a list. And I'm not sure if you'll hear this, but it's actually speaking the word out loud.
More.
And I wanted to point out, I know this is a webinar and this is very small for most of you, but THAN is on the list and THEN is not on the list. There's no reason why you would use THEN here. It's very smart. It knows what is going to make sense in this sentence. So we are actually able to, let's see what happens. I'm trying to make a misspelling here.
Well, and for our students who are ESL, who are used to Spanish, the nice part for them is because obviously the verb noun agreement in Spanish is opposite what we use in English. The word prediction actually is a good way to remind them about when you put what where. And so as opposed to the teacher having to remind them, many of the teachers will have them just, why don't you turn on word prediction as you're writing, just as a way to suggest what you might do next. And they're going, oh, and all of a sudden they're starting to see, okay, so I'm putting the subject first and then the verb, and it just reinforces the the lessons that are being taught.
Awesome. And then subject-verb agreement, homophones and homonyms, especially with your students, your high school students. We can't leave the content train back in fourth grade where their reading level or their writing level is. They need to be able to express what they actually know about high school content. And so in this case, they can focus on telling us about science or math instead of having to worry about whether they spelled the word correctly or not. Definitely a big help. I'm going to just quickly give you guys a quick preview of what things look like inside a PDF. So this is an accessible PDF that was in my Google Drive. And we are able to just select some text here, press the play button, hear that read out loud.
Commonly used anticoagulant rodenticides, however, can take a terrible toll on wildlife.
So there's some content-specific vocabulary. Pretty easy to do. There are several ways that your students can annotate on a PDF document. One of the ways you can annotate is this push pin. You can put this really anywhere in the text. You can add your content by typing. You can add your content by using the speech input. You can also add your content with the word prediction. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of that one. But I wanted to show you one of the ways that I like to use that push pin annotation is actually to offer some extra scaffolding for students. So you can see I can click here and my students will be able to hear.
Mark in green highlighter is good for birds. Mark in red pink highlighter if it's bad for birds.
So your students would have kind of you on their shoulder, reminding them of that compare and contrast strategy. This is just something that I uploaded from a nonprofit. Down here, it's about how pesticides travel up the food chain. So I thought this would be a good way for students to sort of, practice those skills. The students can also annotate directly on the PDF. This is the most popular annotation feature, is the typewriter. So I press that little T. I can answer directly onto the test. And the students can actually hear their answer back.
Onto the test.
And you can change the orientation of it. Maybe you want to make it kind of close to the size of the font that's already there. And if there was a line over here and we wanted to line it up directly on the line, we could do that. And it'll just appear right on there. The third way that you can annotate, those of you that are used to using Google Docs and use the comments on Google Docs, you can also annotate over here on the side. My neighbor, right? Or whatever we wanted to do here on the side. So when you're sharing these contents, this one can be shared by the teacher or the student, and you're going to need to have, editing access to this document to do that. Likewise, this typewriter one, same thing. If you were to share this link right here with anyone, they would be able to see what you've done, but they'd also be able to comment over here. So this is a great way if you want to include parents, or maybe you have like a study group and you want people not to do the students' work for them, but to be able to kind of comment, hey, what's going on with that paragraph? That's another great way. And then you'll notice down here at the bottom, there's a print button. If we were to print this document, you would not see these comments or these comments, but you would see these comments, which means if your students need to take a test in a kind of a worksheet format, they will be able to directly answer that and either print that out, or instead of print, they can hit the print button and save and then share that PDF so that other people could see their answers. So any questions from the group about PDF and Google Docs? We do have a question about writing. One of our participants is asking, Eric, have there been any features that have been particularly helpful to your daughter with dysgraphia?
Oh yes. So one of the things for my daughter is that she has when she realizes that she's misspelled something, it can completely throw her off. So the talk to type actually, when she gets sent home work, now she's only in 4th grade, and so the teacher there is very interested in having them write by hand, which is a whole separate argument. However, as opposed to having to sit there and hey, how do you spell? Hey, how do you spell? Hey, how do you spell? What we do is we set up with the talk and type. So she states the sentence that she wants to say, and it's all spelled correctly for her, and then she can spend her time using the pencil as the teacher wants her to do so. So that way there's not as much frustration. She has a technique that she can use to be able to come up with words that she knows but doesn't know how to spell.
That's great. Excellent. I wanted to share, and Erik, I'm not sure, have you played, Erik, yet with the new Check It feature?
Oh, well, I just had asserted that was a spell check. I haven't gotten to use it as a secondary. So I used to tell people, hey, look, this is a great tool that would be a system-wide spell checker, which of course, you go back a couple of years, that becomes super important because spell check was only available on like Word and Google Doc and not everything else. But now that it's but no, I haven't had a chance to show this off yet. So
excellent. Okay. So since you've been with us for a long time, any of you who have been with us for a long time, especially in our Windows versions, we used to have a homophone checker, we used to have a verb checker, and one of the things that we really tried to do in our most recent iterations of Read and Write, especially in the Google tools, to make it very clean and streamlined. So those things have been kind of combined into one tool, and that is Check It. So it's not just spelling, we're looking at grammar, spelling, punctuation. And back to that whole thing of the students who might kind of, only do the bare minimum of what's expected to them. We know that some students will do whatever they can get to make that red line go away, and then they'll turn it in. It doesn't matter if that's what they meant. It's ready to turn in because the red line is gone. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Check It button. And what we're going to see is you'll see it's on because we have that little purple underline. And then any area of concern is going to be underlined in purple. We're not going to just go through and change it for the student. We're going to give them options that they can look at and see if this is what they need. And we were talking about your ELs that might have trouble with, like subject-verb agreement, this kind of thing. Well, here you go. You get to pick which you meant. So we're going to say, this is how we start school. And you'll notice in our suggestions, we understand students with learning disabilities may not hear things the same way as we do, or all of us do. So we might have, they might hear scowl instead of school, or skill instead of school. So it may be a spelling thing, but it may be a hearing thing. So we're going to go ahead and choose school, and then it's just letting us know we should put a period here. And now that we know for sure it's Mr. Smith, we saw this change. So now we know that is a verb and it needs to agree with Mr. Smith. And we're going to do announcements. And then you can see we understand that these words go together. Pledge of Allegiance, right? So you guys get the idea. The students are actually coming in here and really, making the decision for what they want to do. We're not just fixing it for them. That's not what we do. We give the students the tools that they need to do, to actually show you what they can do or to kind of express themselves. So I think we had a chance to kind of peek at the Check It tool. I wanted to give you guys a sneak peek at some new things. So that Check It tool is new. It's maybe 2 months old. Then one of the next things that's going to be coming this year, we do a lot of updates, is a data desk. I know that everybody is eager to be able to follow what your students are doing. Great. I'm hearing excitement. That's good. So the first step in the data desk is going to be for our Google users. They're going to be able to go in and set which items they want the students to have access to on the toolbar. So that English teacher that just thought it was wrong to have word prediction, she could turn that off during her period. And the default is going to be for an hour. So if you had, the English teacher was giving a spelling test, I hope they're not going to do a spelling test in high school, but they could. If she wants to turn off the word prediction, she could just go into Google Classroom, turn it off for that classroom, and then it's just going to automatically be on for that student the next period unless she overrides that. So that's the first piece of it. And so you can see there's the default is just for an hour. So that's the first piece of the data. We are going to be working directly through Google Classroom. So just to kind of remind folks, Texthelp is very serious about student privacy. We never have access to your student information. We do not know who your students are, and we do not know what they're doing. So we're working very closely with Google to make sure that they're going to be able to deliver this information for you, but they're going to be taking Texthelp out of the loop. We will be able to deliver some formative information for your students, but all without Texthelp knowing what your students are doing. So we're big on that privacy piece. So I'll skip over the iPad piece. I just wanted you guys to know that you do have access to Read and Write for iPad, Read and Write for Microsoft Edge. There's a Windows version and a Mac version. Those are all included in your Read and Write license, whether you're using our Free for Teachers version or whether you've got paid licenses in your school district. So those all include all of the different platforms. So I'll stop here and just double check to see if we have any questions. Okay.
Well, and for those of you guys who are for those who are thinking about moving forward in their on their pay scale, so you might be taking graduate work. I can tell you now that my paras who were planning on getting their bachelors and those who have their bachelors who are going through our credentialing process, many of them, they learn about it and they're like, but my students, they're not terribly interested. But me, man, I'm using it for my college classes. So know that it's there to help everybody, not just oh well, I have to use this for my classroom.
That's great. I use Read and Write for my personal productivity every day. It's super, super helpful. We have another question about editing, and this person is asking, do you think it's best to have the student keep writing or dictating before fixing their spelling? I know if they're dictating, they will be spelled right, but if they're typing, do you recommend they keep working to get their thoughts out and spell check, or do it in the middle of writing?
I'm that person who would argue I want them to continue to go from beginning to end and have editing be a secondary process, because I want them to be able to keep their focus on what it is they're trying to put forth. If they're spending their time stopping and editing and stopping and editing and stopping and editing, then most of the time they end up forgetting, they lose that train of thought, and then they have to go back and try and figure out where they were. So for me, I would have a tendency to, again, this is the gamification side, give them a score of you've got down everything that you meant to say. Now there's a whole bunch of errors in it, which is good, because I want you to go back through what it is that you wrote while you edit it to make sure it makes sense, but you've made it all the way through. You've gone from beginning to end. You started with nothing, and now you have something, and now we're going to go back through, and now we're going to make it pretty, but just get it down first.
I think that's great advice. We're going to move towards kind of wrapping things up here, but we always have questions about pricing, and I wanted to make sure folks understand how things work. Erik has been, I think, on every side of this as well. There's
Yes,
three
indeed.
ways that you can deploy Read and Write. You can get it for an individual user, which, if you're just a parent or there's just one student, makes sense. If you're looking at doing this for, more than a few students in your district, not only is this not as cost effective, it's just easier for your IT to deploy at this group level. So it's $145 per student, just one by one. If you want to do the group, the price drops pretty dramatically. And then if you do what moved in the direction that Erik's district has moved, if you do it for your whole domain, the price is only $1.75 per student. It's very easy. The district can just push it out from the top down. And another way of looking at it, because I think a number of you folks are special ed folks, I just gave you numbers for a typical district, maybe with 10,000 students. If you were to buy it for the entire domain, like the whole district, versus buying it just for students with IEPs or just for students with ELL, it's actually going to be not only more cost effective, but just easier to do it for the whole district. So if you have 15% of the students in your district that needed to use Read and Write, it's going to be most effective to just go ahead and give it to everyone. And, you know, with a national average between 10 and 11% for special ed, I'm guessing almost everybody in California has at least like 3 or 4% ELL. So it's often easier to just do it that way. I'm just going to make sure that you folks will send out a recording of this. I'll also make sure you get access to these slides. We have awesome tech support. I know Erik probably knows these guys pretty well.
Yes,
and they are
great guys.
They're there to help you in our Massachusetts office. We also have professional development. Erik knows these people as well. And they're there to help get you going. And we have everything from webinar-based to actual full-day on-site training. I'll be sending you resources, how to get Read and Write free for teachers, how to get yourself trained up on our free website. If you have questions, we do have a data dash that will let you look at data on a district level to kind of inform your instruction and make sure that your teachers are getting what they need to be successful. And then we just have, I'll make sure you get this link so that you can register for that free for teachers. And we just have one more quick poll that we wanted to take just to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to help you. Let's just go ahead and launch that last poll. And let's see if we can do that. And if we have any final questions, we'll take those. So any questions from you folks that we can do, I will make sure you'll get a recording of this once I have done the captioning. We've got a question about the Check It tab. So if you have Read and Write for Google Chrome, we can get you instructions for getting that out. If you have Read and Write Windows, you want to make sure that you're using the most current version. So it's pretty recent, within the last few weeks. And any words of wisdom, Erik, as a longtime user?
Well, I'm a big fan of starting with the free for teachers version. Have them working up in front of the students. And again, anytime that you can get tools out for everybody is better off than trying to do it individually. Many of our special ed students feel very, very vulnerable about getting special treatment, special tools, special anything. So if you can, the more that you can just, hey, by the way, this is just something for everybody. So if it's going to help you out, let's keep moving. And if it doesn't help you, that's okay. Here's it was available to you if you needed it. And so, those students who would normally go, nah, I don't want to use it. Now, if it's available to everybody, now you begin to see some of those independent users.
Excellent. Well, Erik, we want to give you a big shout out and thank you. There's very few people out there that have seen as much of Read and Write on all the different sides as you have. We really appreciate your opinion and expertise. And I want to thank the rest of you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and sign off here, but thanks again for joining us, and you will be hearing from us again with the slides and the recording.